and officially get started here.
Okay.
So thank you all for joining. My name is Amber Hefner, and I am the Executive Director of IDEA. Very excited to have a great group here today, and want to really give a shout out and a thank you to those educators who've been volunteering an hour of their time to share their knowledge and how things are going with them during this time. We'll also have plenty of time for a question and answer because we want to meet the needs that each of you have. And I'm sure there's a particular reason that you joined today. So we want to make sure that, you know, that we meet your needs and answer your questions as well. So I'll start off by introducing Abby Keim. And Abby, if you want to just do a quick introduction of yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm the Director of Instructional Technology for a small high school in suburban Chicago. Prior to that, I taught computer science and English as a second language. And last year I did my ISTE certification. Well, I got certified in July with Amber. So I will give a shout out to Amber because that was a great experience.
Great. Well, thank you, Abby. And we are very, very honored and excited for you that you were became an ISTE certified educator. As you know, that's not an easy process. So lots of hard work and time went into that. So congrats. Next, I want to introduce Tina Sabatello. We're excited to have Tina here as well. So Tina, if you can share a little bit about yourself.
Yes, hi. And I know the screen says Maria, but you can call me Tina. Maria is my official name. I've been a teacher of chemistry at Maine East High School for the last 27 years. In the last 4 or 5 of those, I'm a Google for Education certified trainer. And this past week, I've spent training my district on 1 app a day through a different webinar that I've been hosting throughout the district for the week to get them ready for this week. So I'm really excited to be here and help share ideas, answer questions. Thank you.
Awesome. And a big thanks also to Trisha Fugelstad. Trisha, I called Trisha out on Twitter. Although her official sign up time is for tomorrow, she has joined us as well. So Trisha, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Trisha Fugelstad. I'm a K-5 art teacher in Arlington Heights, which is a suburb of Chicago. And I also have a master's in K-12 technology integration. So I do a lot of things with digital art, and I've got lots of ideas I could share. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Trisha. All right. So I first of all want to get started. Let's kind of take a minute to just share a little bit about the structure of how you have designed or your district has designed the days upcoming. So kind of let's focus on them. Obviously, they're no longer active guide days. We have moved into ISB sharing about making the decision to have these be e-learning days, home learning days. So Abby, can you share a little bit about what your design looks like for these upcoming days?
Yeah, so we've been off for about 2 weeks now, and we have this week, and then we go on spring break for 2 weeks. So when we first went on break, we decided it was going to be kind of e-learning days, but e-learning in terms of business as usual. So run your classes as you would normally, but use the online format. And we've had some success in that, but the feedback from our families has really been that it's kind of overwhelming students to have that amount of work. So now our administrators are mandating that our teachers kind of scale back a little bit on that and meet maybe every other class period instead of meeting every single class period. We've been leaning heavily on our learning management system. We use Canvas for our LMS, so that has been fantastic. We are in our 3rd year with Canvas, so it's still relatively new, but we've had it long enough where our teachers are comfortable using it for the basics of posting assignments, and getting feedback to students. In terms of meeting face-to-face, we're an Office 365 school, so we've been using Skype for Business with some success and some difficulties as well.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Also, I'm just going to ask that everybody that's on, depending on your comfort level, if you don't mind going ahead, we can use the chat window. So feel free to go ahead and put your name or your Twitter account or email, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, maybe a little bit about who you are, just so we can kind of get an understanding of who our audience is today as well. So feel free to use the chat window to share that information. Tina, share a little bit about your setup for your e-learning days.
Okay, so last week we had our sandbox week, and that's where we met unofficially, voluntarily with our assistant superintendent of learning, and I also conducted my webinars at an hour a day. And then students were given a schedule to follow, which was kind of like our block day, where Monday and Wednesday you meet with your odd number classes, and then on Tuesday, Thursday, you meet with your even period classes. And then Friday's open for office days or individual appointments with kids. So last week my turnout was, so-so. It's a little bit better this week. Our superintendent changed the block schedule slightly. One, to accommodate for children to sleep in. So I think initially it had started at 9 a.m. And so he moved it to 10 a.m. And then instead of being 90-minute blocks, he changed them to 1-hour blocks. And then he did recommend too, because of what kids are dealing with. Also, many kids are working out of their homes full time. They're going to the grocery and working to help out with the family. So minimizing the amount of work they have to do, they would emphasize was important, that quality over quantity is better. And so suggesting perhaps only 30 minutes or 40 minutes of work each day. And so what I've noticed, so we've also, it's optional for teachers to meet online with their students. They don't have to, it's not required. The minimal requirement is availability via email, but many teachers have lent themselves to one-on-one tutoring to help students remediate, because this whole time is going to be about enrichment, whether it's bringing up their grade or giving them some new learning to just, for the sake of learning, as nothing can harm their grade, as put down by our State Board of Education. And so I know, so some of my students did show up online. We use both Google Meet and Zoom. But the ones that didn't, even though I posted the assignment, they still completed the e-learning assignment that I posted to Google Classroom, which is what most teachers use in our district.
That's great. So just to kind of compare a little bit, so Abby, you said that your district is kind of, it sounds like everybody's kind of moving in a little bit of the same direction of kind of cutting back on actual work expectations. And I love, Tina, that you use the term enrichment. I think that's fabulous. But Abby, you said that, are you guys kind of going to a 4-in-1 schedule as well?
Not officially.
Okay.
Our difficulty is that we have a lot of part-time teachers. So they want to maintain our existing bell schedule, but they're
Gotcha.
requesting that if they're doing in-person meetings, that they do that maybe every other class period. Because what they were finding is too many teachers were kind of teaching bell to bell on Skype, and doing that for 6 or 7 periods in a day is just way too much. So we're asking them to cut back. Part of our difficulty as well is that we have a lot of AP classes, and those AP tests are still happening in kind of a modified way. So our AP teachers have been struggling to find a way to kind of cut back on their curriculum and still prepare their students for those tests.
Absolutely, absolutely. Trish, so can you share a little bit about what your district is doing in regards to kind of the design for these days?
So we're elementary, and we weren't necessarily one-to-one, and the kids weren't taking home their iPads or Chromebooks. So we are relying parents helping the kids get through the remote learning day assignments. And so the first 5 days of remote learning were set up by the district. So they put out choice boards and they just kind of filled in, you know, if you're in first grade, go through these lessons, you know, click here, do a little this, click here, do a little that. And it was kind of generalized and kind of light. So today is the first day, and then we had spring break. So today is the first day of teacher created lessons. So we worked on, while the kids were doing the district level lessons, we were working on developing lessons on the fly, just trying to figure out what can they do at home with their parents' computer and, you know, and not stress them out too much. And they'll have some sort of way of checking in. We'll do attendance online, and then they'll go through these things and how will they turn in their work. I mean, it was all kind of, we're just figuring it out as we go. And so today is day 6 of remote learning, and it's directed by the teacher now. So I, as the art teacher, have access to the choice grids, and I just fill in activities at each grade level for each day of the week. And we're just hoping that, well, I guess we're not very concerned about compliance, to be honest, because we can't, because of whatever their situation is. I mean, the kids are home, the parents are working, the access to computers might be limited, and we just want to connect with them and let them know that we care about them and figure it out, you know, and get feedback from them, what's working, what's not working. So I feel like it's very fluid. And, you know, so today or yesterday, I hosted an online live drawing challenge. And it was the first time I had communication with the kids since we were out on, I guess it was March 13th was our last day meeting. And I got such a big review. They are just kind of hungry for connecting again with the teachers. So it'll be different this week because the teachers directed it. And so we'll just see how it goes and what needs to change.
I think it's interesting that you say that they are hungry for that teacher interaction. And I think, especially, I mean, granted, you're at the elementary level, there may not be as much of that at the high school level, or they wouldn't admit it at the high school level.
No, they're absolutely, they really want, yeah, they're home, they're bored. They love seeing their classmates, and they do still love seeing their teachers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I have a college student. He's, you know, a junior at Bradley, and he's basically saying the same thing. He's like, I'm sad, you know, and I'm bored, and I want that interaction. You know, when you have that, you know, on a daily basis, you know, and then it's just stripped away so quickly. So I am tweeting, by the way, so if anybody online wants to tweet while we're talking, feel free to do that as well. Our hashtag is #IDEAIL. We're also using the hashtag IDEAcoaches during these sessions. But that was one of the things that I was getting ready to tweet about was, you know, every one of you talked about those connections and having that engagement with the students. And I think that that's so important right now, you know, based on like what we were just saying. And I love hearing that it's at every level, you know, elementary through high school, that students are still very much wanting that. So kind of right before we officially got started, we started to have a conversation about how and what tools are being used to make those connections. Currently, obviously, we're on Zoom right now. And we also have been using Google Meet. I can go into what we prefer. you know, at some point as well, but I would really love, there was some really fabulous conversations starting to happen. So I kind of want to go back to that for those of you that are just joining us. So one of the things that Abby started to share, and I want her to continue that thought, was the importance of thinking about student privacy. And there are some definite things that are beginning to occur. I don't know if anyone's heard the term now, Zoom bombing, I believe. And so I literally was waking up in the middle of the night thinking, when are we going to be Zoom bombed? So we are going to have to be looking at our processes for continuing to use Zoom as well. But Abby, if you don't mind, can you go ahead and maybe go back a little bit before I interrupted you, but you know, kind of continue that conversation that you were starting.
Yeah, so as I said before, we're an Office 365 campus, so we all have Skype for Business, which is a very secure platform, but we've discovered our teachers and our students don't really like it. So we had some instructors kind of jumping ship and going over to the Zoom free accounts because Zoom was kind of generous and they lifted the limitations that made Zoom not work well. The free Zoom accounts not work well for education. But outside of Zoom bombing, there are also concerns about compliance with laws like FERPA, SIPA. And I think our biggest concern in terms of FERPA is the background recording and what happens to those recordings when that's done. Are teachers going in and removing them, or are they just staying there indefinitely?
I had not even thought about that. That's a fabulous point.
Could that be solved by just not recording the session?
And the free accounts, I'm not sure what your level of control is. I do know that kind of by default, everything is recorded and goes up to the cloud, the Zoom cloud. So I don't know if our teachers are aware that that's even happening, for one, which is a big issue with compliance. But are they actually going into the cloud account and are they removing those? And do they have the ability to do that in the free accounts? I don't use a free account, so I'm not even sure. I know in the pro, we do have one of our teachers using a pro account, and he's able to manage that in the pro account, but that is a paid account.
And that was one of the things when I was being asked this weekend about it from some superintendents is, you know, that that concern as well. There is a significant difference between the free account and the paid account, you know, and essentially every teacher would have to, like, you can't get, I mean, the free account is not a domain account, right? So the free account, every teacher would have to be signing up for it on their own. And then where is the responsibility for that teacher, like Abby was saying, in utilizing that Zoom account? So definitely, you know, something to consider. Tina, what are you guys using?
So they're letting teachers choose between, you know, Zoom and Google Meets. People like Zoom because you can then also make small group discussions. So if you're holding like an AP class online and you want the kids to break out individual groups, you can assign those to those students to different rooms. And so I also, like I was mentioning earlier, I have access, and teachers can have access to Uber conference accounts that are also free and maybe a little bit more secure. I used it for other chemistry collaboration throughout the United States for different projects. And it's free, but it does require you to input your credit card information. But as a teacher, you're the only one that needs to sign up, and then you just give the students a link, which is the same room every time. And it seemed to have be a little bit more smoother in terms of audio and less interruptions in the video. But I've been sticking for now with Meet and Zoom, mostly Zoom, and just have my Uber conference for emergency.
Trisha, how about you? What's your district using?
Well, I think we're being told some different things, like pre-record your videos and put them on Google Drive and then just send out a link. That's one thing we're told. They're also saying if you do Zoom, don't record, which is an option to just not record and just have a conversation. And then don't take screenshots of what you're seeing, especially if kids put in their last names for themselves. So the other thing is, if you do, make a movie and you want to share it on YouTube, use the Safe Share YouTube or website so that you can get rid of all the videos that would come up on the sides. And so I think it's going to be different depending on, like, because we don't have a classroom management system for our students. Like some teachers went with some systems, like there's Google Classroom that some teachers went with, but some teachers didn't. And so now we're trying to figure out a way to make it look like, and this is an odd problem to have, where teachers are going to be able, or parents are going to be able to see on our choice grids what everybody is doing. And so if a teacher in 4th grade says, I'm going to have a live meetup, then if all the teachers in that grade level aren't, then one teacher is more cool and accessible than the others, and they can see that. And this is something that we really didn't have to think about before, that parents are going to be able to see into what everybody's doing because they have these choice grids. So we have to come up with a plan that makes us consistent, at least by teams. But I'm different because I'm the art teacher, so I don't think I'm going to be compared to anybody. And so what I offer can be unique. And so I started thinking, just that I wanted to do something interactive, and I tried to set up a live YouTube, but then YouTube doesn't let you have chats or comments in your live video if it was intended for kids. So it wasn't really interactive. And so I'm like, I stressed out because I went live, and I was forcing myself to do something creative live under pressure. And I didn't really have to, because I could have pre-recorded it and just premiered it at a certain time and then be available to interact with them. I thought I could interact with the parents through the children, or the children through the parents on Twitter. And so that was my strategy, because I couldn't have comments.
Right.
And it worked. It worked. I got a lot of interaction, and some parents weren't on Twitter, so they just emailed me pictures that their kids drew.
Good.
So
Good.
it worked.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm trying to go through the chat here as well, and make sure that if there's questions being asked. One thing I did note, Abby, I don't know if you saw this, but we have Kathleen and Pam on here. One was Kathleen's bilingual elementary instructional coach, and Pam teaches junior high science. Abby has a little experience in those areas as well, which I'm sure is a whole nother conversation that we could be having in regards to engaging in that way during this time also. Abby, do you have any thing that you want to kind of share in regards to that background you have?
I've been kind of impressed with our language teachers in this whole e-learning thing. They're not the most tech savvy, but they've come up with some really great ideas. Because we're using Skype for Business, one of our teachers is having students have conversations with each other, just short 5-minute conversations. They're recording those conversations, and then they're posting them to our LMS. And that's been a really great activity. I know you could also use Flipgrid, but our language teachers felt the students were still a little bit too self-conscious about their language skills to kind of make it open to a bigger group. So they've been having fun with Skype in that way.
I love it. That's a great idea, is just even having them conversate with one another. That's fabulous. Anybody have there was somebody, Cheryl mentioned Seesaw. Do any of, does Tina, Trisha, or Abby have information on the utilization of Seesaw. I know that has been one that's been very popular. I tend to find a little bit more at the elementary level. Trisha, do you guys use Seesaw in your district?
It's a classroom by classroom kind of thing, so it's not across the board, but I think the kids have some comfort with it. And Flipgrid also. And so as an art teacher, I have, so many tools that I could use to communicate with the kids. We have Artsonia, so they could share their work that way too. So I'm just at a place where I'm trying to figure out what direction do I want to go and what do I want to invest in. And then whichever direction I go, I still have to train all the parents So we all know Artsonia, so I'm thinking, should I just not introduce new things to them and keep it as simple as possible and not stress them out? Because the classroom teachers might be very, all the other subjects are putting pressure on them too. So I'm just trying to feel it out right now.
Right. Abby, you were nodding pretty significantly when Trisha said that about the parents. So share a little bit about what that thought was.
Well, through all of this, a lot of ed tech companies are opening up their platforms to more users, so taking away some of the paid options and making them free, which is great, but at the same time, I question whether I should adopt those and train my teachers on them when I might eventually have to take them away if I don't have the budgeting for that. So Trisha, we're definitely having some of those same issues because we'd like to adopt more platforms to kind of solve some of our problems, like doing some digital whiteboarding. We also have another layer of difficulty because we're a bring your own device school. So we have to make sure whatever platforms we're adopting are device agnostic and will work among a large range of devices that our teachers and students have. So yeah, Trish, I definitely feel your pain there because not only do we have to figure this out remotely, but then we have to somehow figure out how to train our families, our students, our teachers, and even sometimes we need to get the parents involved, and that can be a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a big challenge, Abby, having multiple devices that you're trying to plan and work with. Definitely a challenge. So, Tina, I see that you put in that you do use Zoom quite a bit, and somebody had asked about Teams in Zoom. Can you share a little bit more about what Teams is and what you mentioned in regards to Jigsaw?
Okay, so I haven't used the team option yet. I know my colleague has, and she had talked a little bit about it during a meeting I attended last week. And so she teaches AP chemistry, so she might give them a question to answer. And then as the organizer of the meeting, then she could set up their groups. I think she needs their email addresses to set up their groups. And then she can then arrange who is with whom. And then she can actually, I had a TA also said that when kids were in groups, they would drop in on each group to see what they were talking about. So as the host and organizer, you can then drop in and listen. So if somebody asks about what's another idea for using the groups is if you have parts of a lesson that you can jigsaw, you can, again, assign each student to a certain group. And when you do the jigsaw, you have, your learning team where they learn together. And you have your home team where each person in the home team has a different part of the jigsaw. So after the kids learn together the same part of their lesson, then they go back and teach their group about what they learned. So
I like that.
I could try to find a resource, or you could probably just Google, what is a jigsaw and get some ideas for a jigsaw. Works well with articles or like, for example, chemistry, different concepts like bonding. There's different types. So one group can study what's ionic, one can study what's covalent, and so on. And then they can get back and share with their home teams and teach each other. So they become masters together in one group and go back to their home teams to each teach each other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And see, those are sometimes just the conversations like that's something that, a strategy that is used when you're in a classroom physically. You know, and sometimes I think we try to think too far out of the box when we're in an e-learning environment right now, but that's a strategy that can still be used right now. You know, students can still collaborate, students can still do that type of thing. And I love the idea of them coming back and teaching, because as we all know, it's one of the best ways to learn, right, is to then provide that information to others. So thanks for sharing that. There was a question in here as well about a collaborative whiteboard, in particular for iPad. I don't know if any of you are working with iPads or not. Kevin happened to mention Google Jamboard, which I love Google Jamboard. A lot of people aren't aware about Google Jamboard, so we can talk about that here in just a second as well. Kevin put the link into Jamboard. The one thing I would mention about Jamboard is if you are a G Suite district, Jamboard is not necessarily on automatically within your domain. So you do have to ask your IT department to turn Jamboard on. I don't know if Tina, Trisha, or Marie, or Abby are familiar with Jamboard or not. We could have Kevin pop on and share here in a second. But it is a collaborative whiteboard. It is part of the G Suite. It just has to get turned on. Otherwise, the three of you, do you have a collaborative whiteboard that you're currently using, Abby?
We don't have one that we use across the board. I do have some of my math teachers who love to use Explain Everything, and many of our math teachers have iPads. What I don't know is whether they're paying for it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I forgot about Explain Everything. Tina, go ahead.
So I recently, in looking at all this fun stuff to do online with the kids, I didn't have to download anything. I went right to Jamboard, I think, .google.com, and I was able to open up a Jamboard and draw away. But if they don't want to use Jamboard, you know, you can use simple tools like Google Slides, you know. You could assign a whole class of Google Slides to kids, and they could just use the scribble tool. So under the line tool is the scribble tool, and they could just use their mouse. If it's a touch screen, they could use their stylus or even their finger to use the drawing tool on Google Slides. And each kid can be asked to draw something different or solve a different math problem. Also, if you have a Chromebook, there's Squid, and Squid is also released their or given out premium to everybody due to COVID-19. So Squid is an app on your Chromebook that allows you to then, you could write out like on a whiteboard, a worksheet, a uploaded PDF, a graph paper. You can choose music lines if you're a music teacher. So Squid, again, is an app that you can write on your Chromebook with a stylus or even your finger to do whatever you want to do with that. But I don't believe, though, Squid is not collaborative, though, but it's a great either student or teacher creation tool.
Great. Tina, can you put that in the chat, please?
Yes, I can. Let me find the, and I'll go get that right now and put it in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Can you draw on Google Slides on an iPad though?
Yes, you can draw on using the scribble tool. So I know that so far, right, correct me if I'm wrong, Google Drawings, which I love, does not work on iPads. However, you can use the same tools in Google Slides. So I don't have an iPad anymore at home. That's newer. So if you want to give it a whirl, I think when you go to Slides, the line tool and the scribble tool, that should work for you on an iPad. So give that a whirl.
Great. Thanks.
But I do know that there are, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
There are drawing apps. There are drawing apps that you can save it in the drawing format and share it, just like draw it, pass it on. And your collaboration might not be in real time, but it could be one gets shared after the other. Like the Do Ink Animation app allows you to share it in the animation format or file, and then you could pass it so you can have a collaborative animation from one person to the next. But it might not be what they're looking for. I wonder if Jamboard would work on an iPad.
Yeah, Kevin, do you mind coming off of mute and sharing a little bit about Jamboard?
Sure. I really like Jamboard. I recommend it to my staff, K through 4. I'm at a K through 4 school, and I recommended it to them because they were looking for something to share with the kids that they could use and that the kids could use also. So I recommended Jamboard. I just like the way it's interactive. It works on an iPad, a Chromebook, a PC. So I really like it. I also shared a board with my staff, and I asked them to share sort of things that they're using new or something that they're finding exciting. I just thought it was really useful as a resource.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Abby, what have you found in regards to if you were to recommend 1 or 2 apps or resources, what would be some of the top ones right now that you are finding most useful during this time?
I mean, honestly, I would say to lean on your learning management system if you have one. That's really been what has gotten us through this the most. Like I said before, we have a lot of part-time teachers coming from all different areas. And so they don't have a ton of time to invest in using a particular system over another. So we have both Office 365 and Google enabled, and through our learning management system, the teachers can decide which of those to use that will suit their needs. So they can have a student submit a Word document, they can have a student submit a Google Doc. It doesn't matter, it all goes to the same place. So I think using Canvas has really been a lifesaver for us in terms of e-learning.
And you said that you used Canvas, correct?
Yeah, Canvas is our LMS. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I know one of our attendees also had mentioned, and I wanted to go back to this real quickly as well, because I do think it's an important piece to think about, and it was something that's been on my mind the last few days as well in regards to everything that is coming out free right now. And including, I will say, the features in Google Meet right now. And I'm sitting there thinking, come July, hopefully before we're, back to whatever our new norm is going to become, that some of those features in Google Meet, I hate to see go away because I think they are so valuable. So I think that that is an important point that you made earlier, Abby, about looking at these free platforms and maybe being a little cautious about what all you do take on that is currently free, because then what happens when free goes away and you've designed some incredible things based on something that you now have to pay for. So Tina, what do you have to say about that?
I can tell you about that because that's happened to me where I've had premium, then it went off, then it went back on again. So if you develop something in the premium or pro accounts for some of the major apps like, Quizlet, when you go back to the free account, you still have access to what you made in the premium.
Oh, that's good.
They don't delete that out, but then you might want to just, depending on how much time you invest, you might want to check that out and ask them directly first. Most of the support for the apps have been pretty good, the online chats when you ask questions. So
great. So Tina, what would you say are the top 1, 2, 3 apps or resources right now that you couldn't live without?
Okay, so we're a one-to-one Chromebook school, so most of us use Google Classroom. That's for sure, and it lets you put everything eDay 1, eDay 2. Also, I've been training people, love Pear Deck, because you could either put it in student pace mode or use Pear Deck Live to intersperse interactive Google Slides as well as interactive Google Slides so that students can demonstrate their understanding. So love the Pear Deck, that's number 1. And 2, a lot of us love Google Forms for a quick formative check. What I've loved, what I did with Google Forms is just went beyond the quiz, and I've inserted actually their reading passage for where they're learning. So I just copied it from their packet into the form and then inserted questions to have them actively engage with what they're reading, because I just didn't want them having to read the packet page. How do I know what they got out of their reading? So I developed that recently for their activities this week. And definitely Edpuzzle, although they had slowdown issues yesterday. And so I was on saying, hey, what's going with my Edpuzzle? And did I recommend too many people to use it? But Edpuzzle, as you know, is great because you can insert your own videos or videos you find online to check for student understanding. And if you don't know the new features in Edpuzzle, which they don't even have videos on it yet, I made some. I could link you to my YouTube channel. I made some on how to use the new features such as Edpuzzle. You can cut out middle parts of the video now. Before you can only crop at the beginning and the end, you can crop in the middle and also insert your voice anywhere in any section in the middle as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you don't mind, Tina, sharing that resource, your YouTube channel, that would be great. And I feel like Edpuzzle is one of those applications, resources that have been around for quite a while. So it's good to hear that one is still very useful and helpful and continues to update, as well. So that's awesome. Trish, how about you?
Well, I'm making a lot of tutorial videos. So here's my document camera. It's an IPEVO. And there's a free app that goes with it on my desktop or my laptop called Visualizer. And it would record your videos. You could do that in a lot of different ways, but this one also has the picture-in-picture, so it can integrate the camera from your laptop so you can see you and everything that's going on under the camera at the same time while it's recording you and you're making your video. So, and it has a zoom feature on my camera, and you can use the app Visualizer to work the camera at the same time. So lots of different, it's all free, the Visualizer, and I'm feeling like that tool itself is all I need for making my videos for my students. And then I put everything on Vimeo, which there's a free version of Vimeo, but I have a paid account. And then I embed them on my blog so that they can be archived and everything put together. But I feel like I spend a lot of time trying to explore ways to be more interactive with my students, and I'm a little bit at a loss because like all of those ideas that Tina just shared, the Pear Deck, the Nearpod, Edpuzzle ideas, I'm familiar with, but then again, I'm going to have to invest a ton of time and energy into feeling like I'm ready to start teaching through them. And I'm juggling. I feel like I'm at a point where I have to make some decisions, like which way am I going to go? Where am I going to invest my energy and time? And what makes the most sense with my population, elementary. I think they would just enjoy hearing my voice and seeing me draw, and I could talk them through the steps. It's really kind of old school idea, but I think that would give them more connection and make them feel like they're at school and they might take it more seriously. But that's what the content I'm sharing looks like too. I mean, if I were sharing different content, I'm sure I'd be looking for different avenues.
No, I think, yeah, but I think you make a great point in regards to one, educators feeling very overwhelmed right now, and feeling like there are these applications and resources that they have to utilize. And I don't know, Abby, it's so funny because I'm coming all the way back to our ISTE certification conversation. In regards to the idea that it's really, and it's going to sound funny coming from an organization that is about, we are digital educators and, how are we using technology? But at the same time, it's not about the technology, right? It is about those connections that you're making with the students. It is building those relationships. It is being student focused. It is old school is still very important, right? Because a lot of those foundational practices that we use as educators are who we are, you know, and is what makes education and being in education something so special. So I think that where we need to look at technology is how are you utilizing that technology to take the learning deeper, or to do things with your students that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. You know, for instance, the teaming and the groups. You know, in a situation like e-learning, technology allows you to do that, whereas if you were in the classroom, you could physically do that. So, and Abby, I don't know if you want to share anything else in regards to that, but I really do think that I love hearing Trish say the old school, because I think we do have to think about not losing those foundational practices per se, but looking at how can technology then take that to the next level. Abby, do you have anything kind of along those lines you want to share?
Yeah, when this first happened, I was really advocating to do more work asynchronously. We have a lot of teachers who are very old school in the classroom and do a lot of direct instruction. So when we went to e-learning, they're trying to do that exact thing online, which hasn't been the most successful. So that's kind of been one of my frustrations, is these teachers are they're getting frustrated with the technology because it's not doing what they want it to do. And now I think they're finally to the point where they're tired of banging their head against the wall for the past 2 weeks, and they're ready to find a different way to provide the same instruction, the same learning targets in more of an asynchronous way, so that when they are meeting with students, it's more of a check-in with either small groups or one-on-one, so that they're getting that contact and that attention that they need.
I love that. I absolutely. And I do think that is so important, and it is my hope that, you know, again, the new normal does become looking at, like what Abby just said, what is the skill you're trying to work, you know, you're trying to teach the students, and what different practices can you use to teach that skill. And that's where Trish, you know, with being an art teacher, I often say that I feel like the fine arts department has this down to a science, right? Like art, choir, band, you know, those are all so very, very skill based. And you're constantly looking at what is the skill that those students need, and what can I do to get that skill from here to here, you know. Anybody who's had an elementary kid who's been in band understands that, right? The first concert that you hear them play at the beginning of the year to the last concert they play, and that growth that they've had. And that's really what K-12 education, all content areas should be about, right? What is that skill that we are trying to teach them to move them from here to here by the end of the year? And technology can really, really be a big part of that. Tina?
Two things. First one is that, science especially has gone through a focus of practice as well. I'm sure you're familiar with the next generation science standards, and we at Maney's High School or Maine Township have been focusing on the science and engineering practices, so that they can.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, as a former science teacher, I'm right there with you.
Yes, excellent. And I dropped some things in the chat box about, so when I'm online with my kids, I also do virtual circles, which is really fun. We were doing circles before we left for break to learn about each student, what they like, what they don't like, or just like plain old when we were online last week is what are you doing for fun to pass the time? I also asked them, like, what new skill or hobby do you want to work on? What is something you always wanted to try? They can do that at home to get the kids thinking about something positive they could do outside of schoolwork. And it was also really fun to guide them through a digital breakout EDU online. So I guided them through one of them, and so that then in the future I can offer ones for them to do if they're bored, and they'll know how they work. So.
That is awesome. That reminds me, did anybody see somewhere I had found, and I will put it in there as well. It's actually linked to
Flipgrid.
Facebook. Yeah, well, there was a Harry Potter digital escape room that somebody put in as a resource, and I was like, oh my gosh, my kids love Harry Potter. I think all of my kids have read the Harry Potter series like 3 times. So I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Is that the link for just the Harry Potter, all the free digital books?
So the link that I just put in is the Harry Potter one.
I could put the one to all the free digital ones if you like.
Awesome. That would be great.
Okay.
Here's
So
another
Kathleen,
thing that we're, sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, Kathleen just had a question. Kathleen, sorry, we were kind of chatting and several things came through. So are you talking about the Harry Potter one, or what's your specific question?
Sorry. I was just saying.
Oh, you're fine.
That specific breakout, the Harry Potter one, is extremely short, so that and pretty intuitive. So that could be a good beginner one. Like it's like maybe 3 or 4 questions long. Sorry, that was unclear.
Awesome. No, I thought that's what you were referencing, but I just wanted to make sure. So very cool. Very cool. What were you going to say?
I was thinking about digital equity right now, though. We have all these resources for kids that are well connected and have access at home. But I feel like we didn't have in our elementary school a guarantee that every student would have access. I think that my district is trying to solve those problems, and families could contact the district and try to check out material or equipment. But I feel like there's families where there's one computer and for children, and they're all expected to do online learning. And how many hours a day are you going to have that computer running, and one at a time, and are they sharing? And I feel like it's really intense. So I was just thinking about how when I present my content to my students, I have to keep in mind that which is a bummer. I love to draw on the iPads with my students, but they might not have access to an iPad. And so I don't want to make that part of my lesson. Maybe it's something, if you have more time or access, I could offer more. But at the same time, that can make other kids feel bad if I do that. So I have to figure out a plan for how to deal with that issue. But then the other thing is if I'm going to do an art project with the kids, I have to remember they might not have paints at home. They might not, we didn't even get a chance to make art kits. So there's no guarantee they have, they probably have their pencils and paper and maybe some crayons, just super basic. So everything I'm designing is with super basic tools in mind. And even make it more fun, like do found object kind of things, and talk about the things that we can make art from just what's in the kitchen. And
absolutely,
how to make paint out of, coffee and tea and, juice.
I do think that is a fabulous point, and we are about at the end of our hour. But I think we could have numerous conversations just on that equity piece. And I live in Central Illinois, and I'm from a very rural area, and it is definitely an issue. I know one of the districts near where I currently live has done a good job of knowing which students have devices and which students don't. And then they've put together a plan of action to have packets. So the choice board option, right? Which that's why I love the choice boards, because it doesn't make anyone feel like they're missing out on something, because they have a choice. They can choose to do it in a different way. And I've heard districts putting together teams of people to, drive their own cars to deliver these packets to the students' homes that don't have digital availability. I've also heard of districts utilizing buses. So the bus drivers run their regular bus routes and drop off the packets as needed to the homes that need the packets rather than the digital devices. So I do think that it is something statewide, national, honestly, but in particular in Illinois that we need to take a look at of how can we meet those needs, you know, to make it more equitable. And I know that that is one of the things that when ISB put out their recommendations, a big portion of what they looked at was based on equity, and making sure that the recommendations that they made were allowing options to include districts. I mean, there's entire districts that don't have students, you know, with availability of internet, let alone devices. So I think that's a valuable point, Trish, that we need to be thinking about. Whitney has, we'll finish up here just real quickly, but Whitney has put the PDH link in for today's chat. So if you need some PDH hours, it's 1 hour, but go ahead and there's the link, fill out the form. It'll be available throughout the day today. But before we finish up, is there anyone that is online that has a specific question for Tina, Trish, or Abby before our experts leave the room? If you have a question, feel free to please put it in the chat window, or we're at a point where you're more than welcome to come off mute and ask your question as well.
While we're waiting, Amber, can I add something in and
Please.
about computers and laptops? Did you guys hear the news last night and this morning about Chicago Public Schools, that they're somehow getting kids computers and mandating 4 hours a day for online interaction? I have a girlfriend who's an elementary teacher, kindergartner, and just like, yeah, don't know how that's gonna work. You know, they have no training. So, you know, I offered to help my girlfriend, but I'm like, if she has other colleagues, I mean, I don't know what they plan on doing, just saying, here's your computer.
I had not heard that. I did see, so it must have been approved, because I did see that there was a request for a very significant amount of money. So I think it was $75 million that they were requesting to be able to essentially have for Mayor Lightfoot and the board to be able to make decisions about how they were utilizing that without having to go through the typical board approval process to, you know, allocate that money. So I had not heard that update yet this morning, but wow, that's significant.
Hi, my name is Shauna, and I had a question.
Yeah, please, Shauna, bring it on.
I'm an LSB 1 teacher, and I teach special need kids, K to 3rd grade, and I'm finding it really difficult to engage them with Google online because a lot of kids need hand-over-hand support. I have nonverbal, so this is a very difficult time for us. And they do not have touch screens when home with them or any technology. So they're using like their parents' phones, which are apps and not really conducive to the programs we use. At school, we have Chromebooks.
So so the devices did not go home with the students?
No, they weren't able to home with the students. They took our devices that we had that we rotated within the classroom and gave them to the upper grades. My school is kindergarten through age 22. So the older kids got all the Chromebooks, plus teachers needed Chromebooks. Mm-hmm. So people didn't get any.
And I know that, and you know what, Shauna, I'm going to do a little bit of research and see if I can find some very specific instructional coaches and or teachers that are utilizing, you know, that are special education. I think that would be a phenomenal webinar for us to have. So let me do some work on that for you and see what we can come up with. If you want to put your information in the chat, like your email as well, I can make sure that I email that to you. I don't know, Tina, Trish, or Abby, if you guys have anything specifically that you're making recommendations for or utilizing for special education or not. Please feel free to share if you do. But this is another area where I do feel that there are ways to utilize technology to meet some of the needs that your students probably have. I just don't think right now is necessarily the time to try as a teacher to be learning those, to integrate those with your students, but definitely some things that you need to be thinking about moving forward, you know, and then having those resources to be able to utilize with them. But I think it's important to try to remember giving them options, like you said, you know, how, if you have students who still need, you know, someone to physically assist them, you know, with handwriting, then, you know, collectively, there's going to need to be some resources available of, you know, what does that look like now? Because I can't physically be there with them. You know, and maybe that isn't even utilizing technology right now at this point. But Shauna put in the Autismo Autism app. Can you share a little bit more about that?
It's an app that children with autism use. It has high-pitched voices. It's a really great app. It's about $7 though. Okay.
Okay. Well, what I and before we go, Tina, Trish, or Abby, do you have anything specific that you're aware of that your special ed departments are using or that you would recommend?
At our school, we work individually with students to make sure that they have what they need. So that's sorted out at the beginning of the school year. And our learning specialists have been checking in. But we're at the high school level and we don't deal with a lot of high need students.
I had a couple ideas. I think Shanna had mentioned most of the kids are operating off of their parents' cell phones, perhaps, right? Or their own cell phones. So
Yes.
a couple ideas, if a teacher puts out a single Google form and maybe a video of how to upload a picture of their work, so whether it's a drawing, whether it's a math problem, whatever they wrote on paper, they could do a simple upload of a picture to their Google Drive from their phone and put it on their email. They could do that, or on the form, or they can just do a simple video as well off the phone of what they're doing while they're doing it. And then they can also upload that to their drive and then to a link to the in their form. One thing I posted, I think on my channel as well as somewhere on Facebook, a hack for if a kid doesn't have a document camera, to take their phones and wedge it between canned goods. And they could just hit record and record their work on paper. So I put a video of me doing that on my YouTube channel. So if they had to write and explain something, just one sentence, they could just hit record, put it between some cans, or maybe have a brother or sister hold it and record.
Okay, that sounds
Just
great.
simple low-tech things that they can do.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I didn't get your YouTube channel.
Oh, you didn't get my YouTube channel? I'll pop it in there again, okay? It's up in the stream, but I'll put it on the bottom, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that. I disappeared for a second. Gotta love internet connections. But Shanna, hopefully it came through before I disappeared for a second, but I did put a link into some special education resources that we're working on gathering as well. If you do go to our website, our home learning website, and I can put that in the chat also, we are continuing to update that with resources frequently on a daily basis, honestly. So that is some of what we have been working on as well. But again, let me follow up and let me see if I can find some special ed teachers, instructional coaches that would be willing to do, you know, a special webinar with us as well. So, oh my gosh, I think we could keep going on and on, but it is almost 10 after 11. So again, a huge, huge thank you to Abby and Tina and Trisha for sharing their time with us. We greatly appreciate it. One thing I want to add real quickly for those of you that are still on, we are now adding new office hours as well this week. If you didn't get the email, you can check it out on our webpage under upcoming events. But we are now adding office hours Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday that are dedicated to the big three platforms specifically. So Tuesdays we'll be doing focus sessions on Apple. Wednesdays we'll be doing a focus session on Google, and Thursdays we'll be doing a focus session on Microsoft. Which reminds me, Abby, we may be coming to you in regards to Microsoft.
Please do, yeah.
All right. So please check those out as well. If you have, like I said, those sessions will be very designed on those particular devices / platforms during those virtual office hours. So again, thank you all so much for being here. Please reach out to us if we can find some ways to, you know, engage with you, support you, connect with you in any way. And we'll sign off for today and hopefully see you again this afternoon. We have the Apple hours. Otherwise, we'll see you maybe again tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Right. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.